Other clients continued to watch, some whispering, some silently observing, sensing the unique intensity of the moment. She remained composed, her calm voice carrying authority and assurance. Every gesture, every word was deliberate, measured, and purposeful. She was in control not through force but through professionalism, intelligence, and unwavering confidence. As the minutes passed, the situation remained tense but contained. She had already set in motion the steps to ensure that her request would be honored and that the manager would be held accountable for his behavior. She thought about the broader implications, about how important it was for organizations to treat all clients with respect, regard. She continued to stand in the bank lobby, her posture relaxed but her mind alert. She could feel the attention of the staff and the clients around her, all sensing that something unusual was happening. The manager still had his back straight, trying to maintain authority, but there was now a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. She realized he had no idea how serious the situation was. She had to handle this carefully to ensure both resolution and accountability. "I'd like to understand the exact policy preventing my withdrawal," she said, her tone calm yet firm. She wasn't shouting, but her voice carried authority. "If there is a legitimate reason, I am willing to comply. But if there is no valid reason, I expect this matter to be addressed immediately." The manager shuffled some papers, clearly uncomfortable. He glanced at the other staff members, perhaps looking for support, but found none. Everyone seemed frozen, watching the interaction unfold. A couple of clients quietly leaned forward, curious about the tension in the room. The air felt heavy with anticipation. "The procedure requires verification through our system," he said finally, but his words lacked conviction. "I can't explain further." "It's company policy." She raised an eyebrow, trying not to let irritation show. "Company policy must have a clear framework. I have been a client for years and have never encountered a restriction like this. I think it deserves a proper explanation." He sighed and looked away. It was obvious he wasn't prepared to deal with her persistence. Other staff members started whispering among themselves, and she could feel the energy in the room shift. It was no longer just about a simple withdrawal. It was about how authority was being exercised and whether respect was being shown. She decided to take a different approach. Instead of demanding compliance, she focused on reason and logic. "I understand you are following rules, but rules should not override fairness. I'm asking politely and professionally for a standard withdrawal. Surely there is a way to honor that request." The manager's discomfort grew. His eyes darted to the computer screen, then back at her. He realized he was in a situation he hadn't anticipated. She noticed his hesitation and decided to press gently but firmly. "If this cannot be resolved at your level, I would like to speak to someone who can authorize the transaction. I am sure there is a higher authority available." He shook his head. "There's no one available at this moment. You'll have to come back later." She paused, considering her options. There was a brief flash of frustration, but she suppressed it, knowing that keeping composure was her strength. She could escalate, but she preferred to handle the situation in a way that maintained dignity and professionalism. She glanced around and noticed a few clients subtly recording the interaction on their phones. This realization didn't unsettle her. If anything, it reminded her that her approach needed to be calm and strategic. Her mind raced as she thought through possible solutions. She had built a company that relied on careful planning, smart negotiation, and strategic action. She realized she could use those same skills here. She began composing herself, ready to reveal an important fact that would change the course of the conversation. She smiled politely and said, "I think it's important to clarify something. I'm not just any client. I am the owner of a corporation that is a significant client of this bank. The decisions I make about banking relationships impact not only personal transactions, but also corporate accounts. I am certain you understand the importance of maintaining professional relationships with clients of this magnitude." The manager froze. His eyes widened slightly and his mouth opened, but no words came out. The revelation caught him completely off guard. Staff members and nearby clients exchanged glances, sensing the shift in power. The dynamic in the room changed instantly. She remained calm, letting the weight of her words settle. She continued, her voice steady. "I am not asking for special treatment, only the respect and service that any long-standing client of this bank deserves. I hope we can resolve this quickly and professionally." The manager swallowed, clearly nervous now. He fumbled with his paperwork and tried to offer a weak explanation. I didn't realize, it's just policy. I wasn't aware of your importance to the bank. She didn't raise her voice or show impatience. Instead, she calmly repeated her request and emphasized the importance of proper service. Her composure contrasted sharply with the manager's flustered state, highlighting the professionalism she consistently demonstrated. It was clear to everyone in the room that she was not just a client. She was someone who commanded respect through intelligence, presence, and authority. Other staff members began to step back, recognizing that the situation required careful handling. Clients whispered quietly, some nodding subtly in admiration of her approach. She had diffused what could have become a heated confrontation by remaining composed while asserting her authority strategically. The manager looked increasingly uncomfortable. He glanced at his colleagues, seeking support or guidance, but found none. His confidence, which had been firm just moments ago, was now gone. She noticed his hesitation and understood that the power dynamic had shifted. She decided to remain patient, giving him the chance to correct his mistake. She continued to explain, gently but firmly, that she had long-term relationships with the bank and that her requests were legitimate and reasonable. I understand the need for procedures, but procedures must be applied with discernment. I am asking you to do your duty responsibly and provide the service I am entitled to. Her words resonated. Even though she was calm, there was a clear message. Incompetence and dismissive behavior would not be tolerated. The manager's attempt to assert authority had backfired. His mistake was no longer just procedural. It was personal in terms of respect and recognition. She had turned the situation into a lesson in professionalism and accountability. As the minutes passed, the manager's flustered state grew more apparent. He realized that he could not continue refusing her without consequences. Staff members whispered among themselves, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. She remained composed, observing quietly, knowing that her patience and strategic clarity were her strongest assets. She thought about how often she had faced obstacles in her career and how she had learned that the best way to handle challenges was with a mixture of calm, assertiveness, and intelligence. This situation, though smaller in scale, required the same approach. She was in control, not through aggression, but through presence, calm, and authority. Finally, the manager attempted to respond, but his voice lacked conviction. He stammered, clearly unsure of what to say. The staff looked on, recognizing that the situation was no longer within the manager's control. She took a deep breath, maintaining her calm exterior, and prepared to take the next step that would ensure proper resolution and accountability. The room was quiet, except for the faint murmur of clients and the shuffle of papers. She had successfully turned an uncomfortable situation into a strategic moment, demonstrating that professionalism, composure, and clear communication could overcome dismissiveness and bias. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the manager's nervous energy, making it evident who held the authority and the respect in the room. She remained poised, her mind thinking ahead to the next action she would take to resolve the situation. She knew that the manager had underestimated her, and now it was clear that he would have to respond appropriately. She was ready to move forward, confident that her approach would not only secure the withdrawal, but also ensure that the lesson in professionalism and accountability would be remembered by everyone present. The atmosphere in the bank shifted noticeably. What had started as a routine visit had become a quiet but powerful standoff. She remained composed, but inside her mind was working quickly. Every detail mattered. The posture of the manager, the reactions of the staff, the subtle whispers from clients, and the way authority was being interpreted. She understood that this was more than just a refusal of service. It was a reflection of respect, bias, and professionalism. She decided it was time to assert herself in a way that left no room for misunderstanding. She took a slow, measured breath and spoke with clarity. I want to make something clear. I'm not merely a client here. I am the owner of a corporation that has a substantial relationship with this bank. My decisions impact not just personal accounts, but also corporate accounts and services. The manager froze, the weight of her words sinking in. His previous confidence evaporated, replaced by nervous energy. He had assumed he was speaking to an ordinary client, but now it was obvious he had underestimated her entirely. The staff behind the clients in line whispered quietly, some nodding subtly, appreciating the calm strength she displayed. Staff members looked on, recognizing that professionalism and strategic thinking were the key elements that had shifted the entire dynamic. The manager, finally understanding the gravity of his error, began to take the necessary steps to rectify the situation. She allowed him the space to act, observing carefully. Every move, every decision was being made under the scrutiny of the room. She didn't rush, she didn't raise her voice, and she didn't show irritation. Her control of the situation was evident in her patience and clarity. She knew that true authority was demonstrated not through aggression, but through calm decisiveness and strategic action. As the minutes passed, the manager finally approached the computer, reviewing her accounts and verifying the withdrawal details. She stayed quiet, letting him work, but her presence was commanding. She occasionally glanced around the room, noting the subtle reactions of clients and staff, all of whom were witnessing an example of quiet, effective leadership. Finally, he looked up at her, a mixture of relief and apprehension in his eyes. "I believe I can process your request now," he said, his voice lacking its previous firmness. She nodded, maintaining her calm demeanor, and allowed the transaction to proceed. While the withdrawal was being completed, she reflected briefly on the experience. This was more than a simple banking issue. It was a reminder of how professionalism, patience, and strategic thinking could transform a difficult situation into a demonstration of authority and respect. She knew that this experience would have lasting impact, both for her and for those who witnessed it. The transaction completed successfully, and she thanked the manager with a polite, measured tone. Her demeanor remained calm, but there was an unmistakable strength in her presence. She had turned a potentially humiliating situation into a lesson in professionalism and accountability, demonstrating how patience, clarity, and composure could achieve results where anger or confrontation might fail. As she gathered her belongings to leave, she noted the subtle shift in the room. Staff members looked more attentive, clients seemed impressed, and the manager himself was visibly humbled. She had maintained dignity, achieved resolution, and sent a powerful message about respect, authority, and professional conduct. This experience, though brief, underscored the importance of handling challenges with calm, strategic confidence, and reminded everyone present that true leadership was shown through action, presence, and poise. The atmosphere in the bank had shifted completely from tension to a kind of quiet acknowledgement of authority. The manager was still flustered, but it was clear he understood the gravity of the situation. She remained calm, knowing that the resolution was near, but also realizing that accountability had to be addressed immediately. This was not a moment for anger or rash action. It was a moment for decisiveness and clarity. She waited patiently as the manager processed the necessary steps to complete her withdrawal. Her body language remained composed, hands resting calmly on the counter, her eyes observing the room discreetly. Staff members watched closely, some shifting nervously, realizing the incident was not just a matter of policy but a test of professionalism and respect. Clients in the lobby whispered quietly, sensing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. When the transaction was finally verified and the funds were prepared, she calmly accepted them. She did not rush, she did not display triumph. She simply completed the necessary action with the same grace and dignity that had defined her throughout the interaction. Her composed presence contrasted sharply with the manager's evident anxiety, highlighting the effectiveness of patience and strategic authority. Once the transaction was complete, she addressed the manager directly. Her tone was firm yet measured. "This situation should never have reached this point. Your actions today were unacceptable, and I expect immediate accountability." He swallowed nervously, clearly aware that he had failed in his duty. I understand and I apologize. I didn't realize." She raised a hand slightly to stop him. "Apologies are not enough. As the responsible authority, you must recognize that refusal of service, especially without legitimate reason, is not acceptable. Effective immediately, you will be held accountable for this incident." The staff around them exchanged glances, some relieved that the confrontation had concluded, others intrigued by the assertiveness she displayed. She had created a precedent not only for herself, but for the staff who would witness the outcome. Professionalism, respect, and accountability were non-negotiable, and her actions demonstrated this clearly. She then turned to the staff collectively, addressing the broader lesson without singling anyone out unnecessarily. Service must be delivered with fairness and attention to proper judgment. Policies are guidelines, but professional discretion is crucial. This incident is a reminder that every client deserves respect and competence, regardless of assumptions or biases. The manager, fully aware of the severity of the moment, looked at her with a mixture of embarrassment and realization. He understood that the incident had exposed not only his error in judgment, but also a systemic lapse in applying professional standards. His previous confidence had evaporated, replaced by a need to correct and reflect. Without raising her voice or showing anger, she instructed that the matter be reported to the regional office immediately. She requested that steps be taken to ensure accountability and proper training for staff to prevent future occurrences. Her tone made it clear that this was a professional directive, not a personal vendetta, and that the goal was corrective action rather than confrontation. The staff, observing her leadership, began to recognize the broader implications. This was not just a simple interaction over a withdrawal. It was a demonstration of how authority, patience, and strategic thinking could enforce standards of service and accountability. The lesson was subtle yet powerful, emphasizing that proper treatment of clients was integral to professionalism. As the situation began to resolve, she reflected on the broader meaning of the encounter. In her career, she had often faced challenges that tested her patience and strategic thinking. She had learned that the best outcomes were achieved through a combination of calm composure, clear communication, and firm but measured assertiveness. This encounter, though smaller in scale, required those same skills. She had turned what could have been a humiliating or frustrating moment into a demonstration of leadership and professionalism. Once the necessary reports were confirmed and the manager acknowledged the corrective steps he would take, she allowed herself a moment to step back and observe. Other staff members began to relax, clients continued their banking activities, and the tension in the room gradually dissipated. She had maintained dignity, enforced accountability, and set a clear standard for behavior, all without resorting to confrontation or anger. Her mind briefly considered the lessons for broader application. She would follow up with the regional office to ensure that proper training and protocols were reinforced. She would use this experience to advocate for clear, respectful service standards and ensure that bias, whether intentional or unintentional, did not impact client treatment in the future. This was not only about her own experience but about creating systemic change. The manager, now fully aware of the consequences of his behavior, expressed a final acknowledgement. "I understand completely and I will take the necessary steps. I apologize again for the inconvenience and misunderstanding." She nodded, her expression calm but authoritative. "Thank you. I expect that actions will follow words, and that future interactions reflect proper professionalism and respect." With the incident resolved, she gathered her belongings and prepared to leave the bank. Clients and staff had observed a powerful example of leadership, poise, and strategic authority. The lessons of the encounter extended beyond her personal situation. It demonstrated how calm, deliberate action could enforce accountability and respect effectively. As she walked toward the door, she felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The withdrawal had been completed, accountability had been established, and the atmosphere in the bank had shifted toward recognition of professional standards. She had navigated a complex, tense situation with composure, intelligence, and assertiveness, and the outcome reflected her skillful handling of the challenge. She paused briefly at the doorway, reflecting on the broader impact. This was a reminder that leadership was not only about achieving goals, but also about setting standards, creating respect, and ensuring accountability. The experience reinforced her belief that professionalism, patience, and clarity could achieve results that anger or confrontation could not. She stepped outside, ready to continue her day, knowing that the encounter would leave a lasting impression on everyone present and serve as a powerful example of effective leadership and assertive composure. After leaving the bank, she felt a mixture of relief and reflection. The immediate conflict had been resolved, but she understood that the experience carried lessons far beyond the transaction itself. She had demonstrated calm, assertive leadership under pressure, and she knew that both staff and clients would carry the memory of her composure and clarity for a long time. This was a reminder that respect, accountability. Counters glanced at each other, realizing that this was no ordinary situation. The power dynamic had shifted instantly. She noticed a few clients discreetly recording the exchange on their phones. Rather than feeling exposed, she saw it as a reinforcement of the importance of handling situations with composure. This was not about confrontation. It was about demonstrating professionalism, authority, and respect. Her presence alone was commanding attention, and she intended to use it effectively. "I am not asking for preferential treatment," she continued, her voice calm yet firm. "I am asking for the respect and service that any long-standing client of this bank deserves. You may follow policies, but policies cannot replace professional judgment and common sense." The manager tried to respond but struggled to find the right words. I wasn't aware of the full situation. I apologize if..." She held up a hand, signaling that she would allow him to continue only if he approached the matter responsibly. "Apologies are not enough. Actions are what matter. You have a duty to serve clients correctly, and your actions today fall short. I expect this issue to be resolved immediately." He glanced at the staff, perhaps seeking support or guidance, but found none. Everyone seemed frozen, aware of the gravity of the moment. The whispers and subtle nods of clients in the background underscored the significance of the situation. She had transformed a routine transaction into a lesson in accountability and professionalism. Her mind analyzed the situation, considering the next steps carefully. She needed a resolution, and she also needed to ensure that such an incident would not recur. This was an opportunity not just to secure her withdrawal, but also to reinforce a standard of behavior. Leadership often required such moments, where patience and decisiveness converge to create lasting impact. "I am prepared to wait while you take the appropriate steps," she said. "This is not about conflict, but about ensuring that service is provided as it should be. I trust you will do what is necessary." The manager's hands trembled slightly as he fumbled with his papers. He looked at her, his nervousness now evident to all around. She maintained a calm, assured expression, letting the silence convey the seriousness of the moment. She didn't need to raise her voice or escalate with anger. Her authority and composure spoke volumes. The staff behind the counters exchanged glances, some shifting nervously, realizing that they were witnessing a rare example of professional assertion. The clients in line seemed fascinated, quietly observing as a powerful example of poise and authority unfolded before them. Every word she spoke, every gesture she made, reinforced her command of the situation. Finally, she decided to introduce a point that would secure immediate resolution. She spoke clearly and deliberately. "I am willing to clarify any information you need. If there is any documentation required, I can provide it now. What I will not tolerate is refusal of service without a legitimate reason. You must act responsibly." The manager swallowed, clearly unsure how to respond. He realized that mere policy excuses were no longer sufficient. His attempts to assert authority had failed, and the truth of her position had exposed the inadequacy of his response. The staff around him remained quiet, sensing that he could not handle the situation alone. She allowed a moment to pass, observing carefully. Patience, she knew, was a powerful tool. By remaining calm, she emphasized her authority without confrontation. The manager fidgeted, the pressure of accountability settling on him like a weight he could not lift. She had turned a potential humiliation into a moment of strategic clarity. Her voice remained even, calm, and firm. "This is not about anger or confrontation. It is about responsibility, professionalism, and respect. I expect that you will provide the service I am entitled to, and that future interactions are handled with the proper regard for clients and their contributions to this institution." The manager opened his mouth, stammered, and looked around helplessly. It was clear to everyone that he had lost control of the situation. His attempts to assert authority were gone, replaced by an urgent need to correct his mistake. She remained composed, letting him process the reality that his dismissive behavior was unacceptable, and professionalism were values that must be enforced, regardless of the setting or the challenge. As she walked through the quiet streets, she thought about the broader implications. Every organization, no matter how well run, had moments where policies and human judgment could clash. She had witnessed firsthand how rigid adherence to rules without understanding could create unnecessary conflict and disrespect. She decided that she would use this experience to advocate for better training and awareness, not just in her own interactions but in wider professional circles. She made a few calls on her phone, reaching out to her assistant to begin drafting a note to the regional office of the bank. Her goal was to ensure that this incident prompted systemic reflection and improvement. She wanted clear procedures for handling high-value clients, but more importantly, she wanted staff to understand the importance of respect, fairness, and professional discretion. She knew that a simple memo would not be enough. The message needed to be reinforced through training and leadership accountability. At her office, she reviewed her schedule, but kept a part of her day open to reflect further. She drafted a few thoughts for a potential article or internal memo about the importance of leadership and accountability in client-facing roles. She wanted the experience to serve as an example for others how patience, strategic action, and calm authority could resolve conflicts without aggression, and how respect for every individual must remain a core value in any organization. She also reached out to her company's internal team, emphasizing the lessons she had learned. She spoke to them about the importance of composure in difficult situations, about the value of strategic thinking, and about how professionalism and accountability could turn challenging encounters into opportunities for positive change. She shared her own experience not to boast but to demonstrate that even people in positions of influence and authority face situations that tested patience and judgment. The CEO also considered the social impact of her experience. She knew that incidents of bias, whether conscious or unconscious, affected many people daily. By addressing the situation with calm authority, she had not only secured her own rights but also highlighted the need for fair treatment and respect for all clients. She began thinking about initiatives she could support, such as awareness campaigns, workshops, and corporate training programs focused on empathy, fairness, and professionalism. In the days following the incident, she followed up with the bank's regional office. She ensured that the manager involved received proper training and that policies were revisited to prevent similar misunderstandings. She also requested a review of staff protocols to reinforce respect and accountability in client interactions. Her approach was firm but constructive, emphasizing improvement rather than punishment. She believed that real change came from guidance and education, supported by clear expectations of behavior. The story of her experience began to circulate within professional networks. People admired the way she had handled the situation, without anger, without confrontation, yet with decisive action that ensured accountability. Her calm authority became a reference point for leadership discussions, demonstrating how strategic composure could create positive outcomes even in tense circumstances. She also reflected on her own personal growth. Each challenge she faced, from building her company to navigating complex social and professional landscapes, had taught her the value of patience, foresight, and decisive action. The incident at the bank was another reminder that true leadership was not about asserting power aggressively, but about maintaining dignity, assessing situations strategically, and acting in a way that reinforced respect and accountability. Her charity event went smoothly later that week. She thought about how moments like the bank incident could serve as lessons for others. In her conversations with colleagues and friends, she often emphasized that the way one handled small yet significant conflicts reflected one's true character and leadership qualities. By staying calm and strategic, she had turned a moment of potential frustration into a demonstration of professionalism and respect. She also made it a point to check in with the staff who had observed the incident. She wanted to ensure that the lesson was understood not just as a personal victory, but as an example of professional conduct that could inspire others. She spoke about empathy, fairness, and the importance of assessing situations carefully before acting. She shared her experience openly, highlighting how composure and strategic thinking could resolve conflicts more effectively than confrontation or anger. Her reflection extended to the broader business community as well. She considered how companies could integrate similar principles into training programs, leadership development, and customer service strategies. By emphasizing accountability, respect, and professionalism, organizations could create environments where clients and staff alike felt valued and empowered. She believed that real leadership involved shaping systems that promoted fairness, consistency, and ethical conduct. Through all of this, she maintained her calm, grounded approach to life and business. The bank incident, while challenging, had reinforced her belief that obstacles were opportunities to demonstrate values in action. It was not just about a withdrawal or a single encounter. It was about creating a culture where respect, fairness, and accountability were non-negotiable. By handling the situation with patience, clarity, and authority, she had set a precedent that would influence not just that branch of the bank, but potentially other organizations as well. In the end, she walked away with more than the transaction completed. She had secured a sense of justice, reinforced professional standards, and demonstrated that leadership was as much about calm authority and strategic action as it was about decision-making and influence. Her actions reminded everyone who heard the story that respect, accountability, and composure were powerful tools, capable of transforming even tense, difficult moments into examples of leadership, fairness, and professionalism. She carried these lessons forward, committed to ensuring that every interaction, every decision, and every action reflected the values she had demonstrated with quiet, unwavering strength. She also reflected on her own personal growth. Each challenge she faced, from building her company to navigating complex social and professional landscapes, had taught her the value of patience, foresight, and decisive action. The incident at the bank was another reminder that true leadership was not about asserting power aggressively, but about maintaining dignity, assessing situations strategically, and acting in a way that reinforced respect and accountability. Her charity event went smoothly later that week. She thought about how moments like the bank incident could serve as lessons for others. In her conversations with colleagues and friends, she often emphasized that the way one handled small yet significant conflicts reflected one's true character and leadership qualities. By staying calm and strategic, she had turned a moment of potential frustration into a demonstration of professionalism and respect. She also made it a point to check in with the staff who had observed the incident. She wanted to ensure that the lesson was understood not just as a personal victory, but as an example of professional conduct that could inspire others. She spoke about empathy, fairness, and the importance of assessing situations carefully before acting. She shared her experience openly, highlighting how composure and strategic thinking could resolve conflicts more effectively than confrontation or anger. Her reflection extended to the broader business community as well. She considered how companies could integrate similar principles into training programs, leadership development, and customer service strategies. By emphasizing accountability, respect, and professionalism, organizations could create environments where clients and staff alike felt valued and empowered. She believed that real leadership involved shaping systems that promoted fairness, consistency, and ethical conduct. Through all of this, she maintained her calm, grounded approach to life and business. The bank incident, while challenging, had reinforced her belief that obstacles were opportunities to demonstrate values in action. It was not just about a withdrawal or a single encounter. It was about creating a culture where respect, fairness, and accountability were non-negotiable. By handling the situation with patience, clarity, and authority, she had set a precedent that would influence not just that branch of the bank, but potentially other organizations as well. In the end, she walked away with more than the transaction completed. She had secured a sense of justice, reinforced professional standards, and demonstrated that leadership was as much about calm authority and strategic action as it was about decision-making and influence. Her actions reminded everyone who heard the story that respect, accountability, and composure were powerful tools, capable of transforming even tense, difficult moments into examples of leadership, fairness, and professionalism. She carried these lessons forward, committed to ensuring that every interaction, every decision, and every action reflected the values she had demonstrated with quiet, unwavering strength.